Okay, all good. So yeah, I'm Sasa Moilanen and I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Zoined. And in this Zoined case study kind of presentation, I'll go through what we have been doing on our way to kind of become an AI-native SaaS company. And here's a bit of the agenda that you can hopefully see there, although actually you cannot. This is interesting. Let's see. I'll just share again. So let's see if it starts going okay. Okay, this looks much better. So you all see the agenda as well. So yeah, I will talk about a bit about our journey, and then I would like to highlight a bit also the kind of difference between vertical and horizontal SaaS, because I think that's a very important topic when it comes to also building like AI native applications, and briefly discuss a bit about kind of what we are actually doing with Gen AI and why it quite often might be a good idea to be not just another AI wrapper, although you can, of course, probably make a successful business out of AI wrappers as well, but we have taken a bit different route in our business. And then talking a bit about like what I see as the kind of unfair advantage of Gen AI-powered applications. In our case, I use this kind of data analyst example. And then in the end, still going through 10 lessons learned from these experiments and proof of concepts that we have been doing. So what we do is basically serve retail and restaurant chains with this kind of plug and play analytics solution. And you can see some of the logos there on the screen that are our customers. And when now going into this kind of like a AI native SaaS, what that really means in practice for us is currently solving things like text to SQL problems and those kind of things. So we're basically trying to build like a next level of self-service business intelligence. So basically for business users like restaurant or retail store managers, they need an easy way how to basically access their business data and make better decisions. So in the traditional tools, you have had to learn quite complicated tools like our traditional competitors are companies like Microsoft Power BI or Tableau or Qlik and so on. And of course, the world has been moving more towards like self-service business intelligence. But what has been missing is kind of the very easy natural language-based view, how you can just like ask directly about your own data and kind of let, in our case, our data analyst said basically create those reports for you. And what I said about the kind of vertical SaaS versus horizontal SaaS, just wanted to briefly show this slide because I think this still holds true in the whole like AI SaaS space. So the kind of value proposal in a way in a lot of the vertical SaaS is that you can take some vertical, like in our case, retail and restaurant, and build something just works out of the box. Like in our case, this kind of plug and play analytics versus kind of going with some horizontal SaaS solution like Power BI, where you actually have to do this like traditional business intelligence IT project. So with vertical SaaS, you can do things like get everything up and running in under 24 hours and have like 30-day free trials and this kind of stuff, versus the kind of long IT project route with a lot of the horizontal SaaS products, as you can see here. And then coming into this topic of not being another AI wrapper, so what are like the typical elements that you would see in many of the tools that are not just those AI wrappers? So first of all, of course, you have to have access to some proprietary business domain data if possible. So this doesn't have to be like relational databases. It could be, of course, also like unstructured data like documents or email or whatever. But it has to be something that like a ChatGPT cannot access just like that. So it needs to be like something that is a like competitive advantage for you. And quite often when you deal with a lot of data, you actually have to build all kind of backend stuff, like in our case, like a high performance data management platform. You have to have like data integrations and like data storage and fast query performance and so on. We, for example, ended up developing our own like ETL client to have the kind of performance that we wanted. And then I think it definitely helps if you're working in vertical SaaS and have all that business domain knowledge. So you can have like best practice stuff, like in our case, like KPIs, reports, and dashboards out of the box. And then when we move to the kind of whole AI native part, I think a lot of companies will face the need to have some kind of like a semantic metadata layers, not just in business intelligence, but somehow you need to have basically like data about data and descriptions about data, in the sense that you can basically get things like text to SQL working. So you need to have that kind of like a vertical specialization at the moment that you can build stuff that just works out of the box. And in our case, it's this Gen AI powered data analyst that we can also use for root cause analysis. And then, of course, going forward, it will be also about like providing recommendations and even automating whole processes, because that's, I guess, at the moment where the investors' interest is, that you can basically have applications that fully even automate certain business processes or workflows. So I think in many areas we are not there yet technically, that we could, for example, let let's say restaurant owner just run the whole business with Gen AI agents. I mean, they still kind of need to be involved, and they still need typical like a traditional user interfaces. So I don't believe like UI and UX is like dying right away. We are still designing this software for real people at the moment. But of course, when automation capabilities will advance, I mean, the AI agents will not need this kind of like a user interfaces as you see here. But on the other hand, for example, our SaaS solution, the UI UX part is just the very like top of the iceberg. So all the hard work is there in the backend, like having the access to data through APIs, having those data warehousing procedures and tools working, having the vertical business domain knowledge, having solved the text to SQL problem in the specific like vertical, and then providing like this root cause analysis and so on. And only the kind of maybe Gen AI powered data visualization need would kind of drop at some point if the agents can do everything, as they wouldn't like obviously need similar kind of user interfaces. And if we think about the kind of what is the unfair advantage going further, here on the left side of the screen, you can see like the traditional data analyst there behind the desk, and people are queuing with their reporting requirements, and things get delayed. And by the time the analyst has provided that report that the business user was asking for, maybe the business need already passed. Versus then our idea of what it can be basically. So it's, in my opinion, like three different things. So it's about the availability and the cost and the performance. So with these kind of AI agents, you can of course have like a 24/7 availability for every single business user. So everybody has like all the time access to their own data analyst. Then about the cost, I mean, everybody knows that the cost of these kind of solutions is going down all the time. So compared to that, like a minimum 40 euro per hour salary to that human data analyst, I mean, you can deploy like hundreds and hundreds of agents at the same time, serving all the different business users. And it's also about the kind of possibility to work in parallel when you actually analyze the data. So one of these like agent instances can, for example, run 100 SQL queries at the same time, basically analyzing huge amount of data in a few seconds, and maybe at the same time they are also doing like web searches and looking stuff from unstructured documents, whereas one human can do like one thing at a time, not like 1,000 things at the same time as these agents can. And then in the end, going through the kind of 10 lessons learned. So I'll start with the group I call technology-related lessons learned. So I can only, of course, speak on our behalf, and not everybody like AI SaaS solution is similar. But in our case, I would say that we continued too long with this kind of like Gen AI software frameworks. In our case, it was called LangChain, and it was nice in the beginning to start. But I mean, in the long run, it just simply doesn't work for like a scalable production solution where you have to think about performance of this application and so on. So in practice, we spent like December now, like getting rid of LangChain everywhere in our architecture. So time well spent. But thank you, Softlandia, for helping us do that. And then the second one is about the high accuracy RAG implementations are challenging. I won't go into the details, but for example, my background is not so technical. I don't have that kind of like a very strong engineering background. So I was, for example, too naive to think that, I mean, how easy it is to ask like from ChatGPT stuff, and then you just put your own proprietary stuff there, like access to relational databases and your own documents, and it just works. And bloody hell, it just doesn't really work very easily. It takes a lot of effort to get it working. Then implementing fine-tuning, something that I don't know yet whether it has been the right solution for us or not, but we have gone that way. And of course, just have to understand then the compromise that the kind of speed of implementing things and experimenting slows down. And then the last one of the technology part that I think evals are kind of mandatory to have. So if you are trying to build like a real SaaS product, I mean, you cannot base it just on intuition that if you change something, does it actually like become better or worse? You need some structure in that. On the UX side, the first learning is not that much Gen AI specific, but I would say that the Gen AI brings some new opportunities how to provide like proactive insights and anticipate user needs. So it's not a new stuff, but I think we have now novel new ways how to kind of delight the user in the UX. Then text and speech as input and output have really their own specific use cases, and we haven't really tested, of course, everything, but based on interviews with customers and so on, we see in our industry quite a lot of interest in, for example, like a voice inputs. And I think it's good to keep in mind that an average person like speaks 3 times as fast as they type. So from this Finnish optimization point of view. And then also, I mean, the other way around, basically people read like 2 times as fast as they listen. So in a way, like the Finnish optimization thing would be that you can speak and then you read the answer if you want to optimize. But it's more maybe in our niche, for example, about those use cases that if a person is inside a, let's say, restaurant kitchen, they have their hands full. I think like a voice as input is probably the way to go in those kind of circumstances if they need some information quickly. And then addressing latency becomes a key consideration. This is about the kind of performance of these kind of applications. I mean, before implementing these kind of like a Gen AI features, like 90% of the time our users got their dashboards and reports in under 1 second visible to them by the time they hit refresh and seeing the results. Now implementing like these new steps, you introduce all kind of complexity where you check user intent and do checks here and there. And suddenly that 1 second has turned into like between 5 to 10 seconds. So we need to work on that, but it's good to keep in mind that you kind of inherently introduce a lot of latency when you start taking these kind of techniques in use. Then the last ones I think this existing SaaS product provides an excellent kickstart for anybody thinking about going like this AI native route. So it's, I think, much easier to start with something you already have than totally start from scratch. The second point is about focus on systems thinking. So what I mean with that is quite often people just talk about the latest like large language model versions, what has been introduced by whom and so on. But if you think about this kind of solution, like for example, we have, it's a very minor part of the big architecture part, what version of large language model there is and so on. It's so much more about the whole like architecture, how you build it in a way that actually works. And for that is related the last point as well, that traditional software engineering skills are still in key role, because I mean, you do need all kind of new experience and competence when you build this kind of stuff, but in the end, it's still mostly about kind of solving traditional like a backend problems and plumbing and data management issues and making sure you follow like this kind of best practices in writing code and so on. So you need basically good software engineers. So those were the 10 lessons learned, and that was also the last slide. So I think we'll move forward then to the questions part, if anybody has any.
Thank you, Sasa. I'll bring the microphone. Just raise your hand to ask a question.
Right, so thank you for the presentation. My name is Marko Jylilä. I come from All Access Services. So basically, about the interfaces then, so according to the pictures that you showed, let's say the architecture is quite complex and it requires quite many interfaces. So how often these interfaces are updated so that basically your system doesn't notice it, or how do you know that you are not using all the interface?
This is maybe an issue with interfaces to business systems, but typically those are like API interfaces, so they wouldn't normally just break down unannounced at least. So we haven't seen really an issue that we would have problems there. And of course, our like a main data source for the application is our own data warehouse, where we of course control everything. So that part is not an issue, that how we do that part. But yeah, we haven't seen like really problems in that area.
Thank you. And then another question, so related to these sort of different technologies related to AI in general. So how do you decide that what is the best technology to start with?
Well, I think it always depends on the use case, and it's good to discuss with people who actually have been in a lot of projects and have tried out different things. And of course, you should test things yourself as well as much as possible. But for example, in our case, we have relied now to some extent on, for example, Softlandia and expertise from many projects they have done. So I think normally it's a good idea to have some kind of like an architect, for example, in those discussions, that what this kind of makes sense to try with your specific use case and situation. No silver or bullets or anything like that, I guess.
Then the last and final question, so related to this security thing. So what if these companies, they have been, not now just coming from nowhere, but if they are disappearing to somewhere, so what happens in those cases? Are you still able to run the systems even though there is no possible support?
What kind of companies do you refer mainly?
I mean that, in general, these AI companies that are developing the technology behind them, these kind of things, so are you relying on those, or do you just need to get a sort of basic code, let's say, libraries from them, and that's enough then, and you don't need them anymore, or how does it work?
Like I said, I mean, we are currently not relying much on any of those like framework stuff. So we got rid of that. And then on the model side, I mean, we are building it so that we can change the model whenever needed. So we are not relying on any one specific model that much. Otherwise, there's not really that much like AI specific software. It's more about just writing the code that is kind of high performance code and works, and you don't like need any additional third parties there playing around and bringing you performance problems.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for the talk. Interesting that you it's great what you building, not like a wrapper or like not selling AI shovels, like something really deeply integrated AI. We're also doing the same, trying to do the same. I'm from Dollar Deploy. My name is Ruslan, and we're building the DevOps AI kind of thing. So I'm interested. So the previous question was like, you said that you don't use any frameworks after LangChain, but how actually you do it? Do it like everything from scratch? I'm interested in this AI agent implementation, how you do this, and the same maybe just to ask at the same time is this like a local model? So you use APIs, you use how like this prompts security, how you make sure that this data doesn't go like into the training models? That's it.
Yeah, I think the current view on the best practice is that if you use something like OpenAI, you would use like Azure in Europe, that at least somehow tries to guarantee that they don't use that in training that data or provide access outside of GDPR principles and so on. As for the actual like a detailed technology for the agents, I would probably let Softlandia guys tell all the details. I mean, it's not like I would be on that level, on technical level, that I would know the latest, what are the potential, let's say, other third-party tools they are using there. There's one question there on the back.
Yes, I will bring the microphone. Regarding the frameworks in general, I think it's a very useful distinction to make. Is it a framework that you are building your core logic on, or is it something that supports your software? So that there's a difference there.
All right, hi. Just a quick question in terms of the models that you're using. Are you testing them out? Which ones are work best, and as they develop, do you continuously test them somehow to define like which ones work best with your application?
So that's actually one of the reasons why I mentioned these evals are mandatory, that we are currently putting quite a lot of effort that we get that framework in place so we can properly test whether they actually bring concrete improvements or not if we change the model. But in our case, we haven't yet had time to really do a proper testing between all the different models. And one of the key reasons is that I mentioned that if you use fine-tuning, it really slows your experiments down. So you cannot just jump from one model to another if you have went with the fine-tuning route.
Fuad Kalhori from Metropolia University of Applied Sciences. My question is that how much do you pay attention to the AI technologies that you use? Are they European or non-European? Is it open source or closed source? And the second question is that have you been had challenges what comes in terms of regulation, be it local or, for example, the AI Act or Data Act? Thank you.
Currently, we haven't really put that much effort into whether the model is from US or Europe and so on. And currently, as mentioned, we use OpenAI, which is obviously like a US model, but we do, of course, want to provide it in a way in Europe that doesn't conflict with any GDPR regulations and so on. And for your second question, it hasn't been really coming up to us as a topic. I don't think our application is in that area where it directly would cause us to think about that topic that much. go into detail about the evals. It's one of the very, very really trust what the model says, and the model itself changes. I am a bit uncomfortable.
Noni? Yeah, could you give a few examples about the evals and the learnings that you've had with that? Because going into the model might change without you even knowing it, and sort of how do you approach that? What can you teach us?
Well, I probably cannot teach you that much yet, as we are quite in early days. I have just now realized that they are mandatory, so I wanted to give you that as a learning. But I can say that we are using them currently as like a just human labeled things. So we have like thumbs up and down kind of things in the chatbot. So basically, it's possible to kind of rate those, and then we are looking for a set of like this kind of like a golden set of like results for certain queries and so on, and kind of ensure that the model returns correct results. And would like to highlight that in our case, the model really doesn't like hallucinate some wrong results in any cases, because all the data we show in the user interface come through our own API. So basically, it's not getting like formatted by the model anyway on the way to the kind of user interface. So in worst case, of course, the model might interpret the question wrong. So you ask for sales without VAT, and then we return sales with VAT, but it will kind of state in the user interface that this is now what you got. You got sales with VAT. Are you happy with that, or should we do another query?
I have one question, quick question. I think you're kind of an early adopter with the AI. So what do you think, what are the key reasons that made you go for it now and not like in 6 months or 1 year or whatnot?
For me personally, I've been following the space for a couple of years, but I think like 1 year ago during Christmas period, I spent the whole Christmas like just learning about everything. And then I thought that now we just need to start doing stuff in this area. And we started with the kind of very easy things, like first we just used it to translate language in our user interface, and then some simple chatbot on our website. And then we moved to kind of really like solving the text to SQL problem. And I just thought 1 year ago already that, I mean, we just need to go into this. I mean, this is one of those like situations where you can see that, I mean, if you don't go into this, then you won't be around in like 5 years anymore as a very relevant player anymore. So we do what we can with our resources, and there's of course important that we had all the building blocks already, so it wasn't that difficult this decision for us, because most of the work is there in those building blocks that I showed, that all the data management parts and so on. That's the kind of difficult part to get working correctly.
All right. Thank you, Sasa. We'll be around. You will be around here for conversations later tonight, so make sure to ask very tough questions from Sasa.
Yeah, I'll be around here.
Thank you.